I always thought marriage meant loyalty and love, until I saw him care more for her than for me. I sat by the window, staring at the gray sky. Rain tapped gently against the glass, mirroring the heaviness in my chest. The house was quiet, but the silence felt suffocating. I could hear the faint sound of footsteps outside. My heart clenched when I recognized them. Mark's steps. He was coming back home. But lately, home didn't feel like home anymore. Mark walked in, his shirt slightly damp from the rain. He barely glanced at me before hanging his jacket. I waited for him to say something, anything, but all I got was silence. His eyes seemed distant, as if his mind was elsewhere. "Did you eat?" I asked softly. He shrugged. "Not hungry." That was it. No warmth, no interest, not even a polite smile. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to stay calm. I followed him into the kitchen, where he opened the fridge and pulled out a bottle of water. He sipped it carelessly, his gaze fixed on the floor. My hands trembled as I wiped the counter, trying to distract myself from the growing emptiness inside me. "I saw Lily outside," I said casually. That caught his attention. His head turned slightly. "Did you?" Lily, the widow next door. Beautiful, soft-spoken, and helpless. Everyone pitied her after her husband passed away. But Mark's concern for her went beyond simple sympathy. I had noticed months ago how he'd rush to help her with groceries, fix her broken fence, or mow her lawn. Things he hadn't done for me in years. "She needed help with some boxes," I added, watching his reaction closely. Mark's brow furrowed. "Did you help her?" My jaw tightened. "No." "But you did, didn't you?" He looked at me, his expression blank. "She's alone. What do you expect me to do?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "She's not your responsibility." Mark sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "You're overthinking it, Emma. Overthinking it." That's what he always said. When he spent hours at Lily's house fixing a leaking pipe. When he canceled dinner plans with me because Lily had a flat tire. When he laughed at her jokes but stayed silent when I spoke. I forced a smile. Maybe I am. Later that evening, I stood by the bedroom window, watching the lights flicker through Lily's window. Mark was there again. I could see his silhouette standing close to hers. My heart twisted painfully. He should have been here with me, not there with her. The next morning, Mark left early. No explanation, no goodbye. I sat alone at the breakfast table, my hands wrapped around a mug of coffee gone cold. My phone buzzed. A message from my friend, Claire. "Claire, did you see Mark at Lily's house last night?" My fingers tightened around the phone. Claire knew. Everyone knew. Later that day, I decided to confront him. He was in the garage, organizing his tools. His back was to me, but he sensed my presence. "You're spending a lot of time with Lily," I said. His shoulders tensed. "She needs help. And I don't." My voice broke. "Do you even see me anymore?" He turned to face me, his eyes cold. "Emma, this is not about you." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Then what is it about?" Mark sighed. "She's going through a hard time. You wouldn't understand." I laughed bitterly. "You're right. I wouldn't understand how my husband could care more about another woman than his own wife." His jaw tightened. "You're being unreasonable." "I'm being ignored." My voice cracked. "I feel invisible to you, Mark." For a moment he said nothing. His eyes darkened. "Maybe that's the problem." My breath hitched. "What?" "You're too much sometimes. Always needing attention. Lily, she's easy to be around." It felt like a punch to the chest. My knees weakened, and I leaned against the wall for support. "So, you prefer her?" Mark's silence was answer enough. That night, I lay awake, tears streaming down my face. The man I had given my heart to was slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The next day, I saw Lily in the garden. She smiled sweetly. "Mark helped me fix the sink last night. He's so thoughtful." My stomach turned. "Yes, he is." She gave me a pitying look. "It must be hard for you." It was more than hard, it was humiliating. But I refused to let her see me break. That evening, Mark came home late. He smelled faintly of Lily's perfume. He climbed into bed without a word. I lay next to him, staring at the ceiling. My heart raced, my mind spiraling with questions I didn't want answers to. Finally, I whispered, "Do you love her?" Mark didn't answer. He turned away, his back facing me. Tears stung my eyes. I rolled onto my side, clutching the pillow as silent sobs shook my body. In that moment, I realized I had already lost him. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop trying to hold on. Cliffhanger. The next morning, Mark left without saying goodbye. This time, I didn't care. Something inside me was shifting. I wasn't going to fight for someone who didn't see my worth anymore. The days after Mark's cold indifference were a blur. The house felt heavier, like the walls were closing in. Every time I walked past his side of the bed or saw his jacket hanging by the door, a dull ache pressed against my chest. But I told myself enough. Claire's voice pulled me back to reality as we sat at the local cafe. "You look tired," she said, concern etched into her face. I forced a smile, stirring my coffee even though I had no intention of drinking it. "It's nothing." Claire leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "Emma, it's not nothing. Everyone sees it." "Sees what?" asked, my voice thin. "That Mark is more interested in Lily than his own wife." My chest tightened. "It's not like that," I said, but even I didn't believe it anymore.
Claire sighed.
"How long are you going to let him humiliate you?" I swallowed hard. "What choice do I have?" Claire's gaze sharpened. "You have every choice. You don't have to stay."
Stay.
The word echoed in my mind long after Claire left. That evening, I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker. Mark's car pulled into the driveway. He stepped out, his phone pressed to his ear. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said, his tone light. My stomach sank. When he walked through the door, I forced myself to act normal. "Dinner's ready." Mark barely looked at me. "I'm not hungry." "Where were you?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. He tossed his keys on the table.
"Out."
"With Lily." His head snapped toward me. "Why does it matter?" I stood up, my heart hammering. "Because I'm your wife." Mark rubbed his temples. "Emma, you're making this a bigger deal than it is." "A bigger deal?" My voice trembled. "You spend more time with her than with me." "She needs me," he said flatly. "And I don't." Mark's eyes darkened. "You've always been too needy." My breath hitched. "Too needy?" he scoffed. "Lily doesn't question me. She trusts me." My chest squeezed painfully. "Trust." I laughed bitterly. "You call sneaking around trust?" Mark stepped closer, his eyes cold. "Stop acting like the victim." Tears burned in my eyes. "I am the victim, Mark. I've stood by you, supported you, loved you, and you throw it all away for her." "She's not a problem," he said. "No," I whispered. "You are." Mark's jaw tightened. He grabbed his jacket. "I'm going for a drive." And just like that, he left. The door slammed shut behind him. My hands trembled as I sank onto the couch. A sharp ache twisted in my chest, but beneath the pain, something else stirred. Anger. The next morning, Mark was gone when I woke up. I sat at the table, clutching my coffee. Claire's words echoed in my head. "You don't have to stay." I took a shaky breath. Maybe it was time to stop being the woman who begged for scraps of love. I spent the day rearranging the house. I packed away the framed pictures of our wedding and pushed Mark's belongings into the spare room. By evening, I stood in front of the mirror, studying my reflection. I looked tired, but there was strength beneath the exhaustion. For the first time in months, I saw myself, not just Mark's neglected wife. Mark came home late. He walked into the bedroom, glancing around. His eyes narrowed. "Where are the pictures?" "I put them away," I said calmly. His brow furrowed. "Why?" "Because I don't want to see them anymore." Mark's lips parted slightly. "Emma, you're overreacting." "No," I said, my voice steady. "I'm reclaiming my space." Mark stared at me, confusion flickering in his eyes. "What's gotten into you?" I lifted my chin. "Clarity."
He scoffed.
"You can't just erase our life." "You already did." He flinched. "Emma, I'm done competing with Lily. You don't have to. But I do, I interrupted. Because you made her a priority. And I let you. Mark's mouth tightened. This isn't fair. I smiled thinly. Fair? You don't get to talk about fairness. Mark took a step toward me, but I held up my hand. I need space, I said. His jaw clenched. What does that mean? I'm not sure yet. I turned away, my heart pounding. Mark stood frozen, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. For once, it was him searching for the right words, and me walking away. I didn't cry that night. I slept soundly for the first time in months. When morning came, Mark was already awake. He sat at the kitchen table, his eyes dark.
I made coffee, he said.
I sat down across from him. Thanks. We drank in silence. The air between us was charged with unspoken tension. Finally, Mark said, Are you leaving me? I met his gaze. Not yet. His brow furrowed. What does that mean? It means, I'm deciding if you're worth fighting for. Mark's face hardened. And, if I'm not, then I walk away. Mark's eyes darkened. He reached for my hand, but I pulled back. I'm not the same woman anymore, Mark. My voice was steady. Figure out what you want, because I'm not going to wait forever. For the first time in a long time, Mark looked uncertain, and that gave me power. Cliffhanger. Mark watched me as I stood up and walked away. His gaze followed me, confusion and fear flashing in his eyes. I could feel the shift. This time, I wasn't the one chasing him. Days passed in a blur of silence. Mark's presence in the house was like a shadow, cold and distant. He would come home late, barely speaking a word. When he did speak, it was short, clipped sentences that left no room for warmth. But I wasn't breaking anymore. The old Emma would have tried harder, begged for his attention, sought his approval. But the woman I was becoming stood taller, stronger. I was sitting on the porch one evening when Claire showed up, a bottle of wine in hand. You look different, Claire said, narrowing her eyes as she sat down beside me. Different how? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Claire smiled knowingly, less desperate. I laughed, a sound that felt foreign yet natural. That's because I'm not. Claire leaned back, swirling her glass. So, what's the plan? What plan? Claire's eyes darkened. You can't seriously be considering staying with him. I don't know yet. My voice was calm, even. But I do know I'm not chasing him anymore. Claire's lips curled into a small smile. Now that's the Emma I remember. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Mark's car pulled into the driveway. He stepped out, glancing toward us. His eyes lingered on me for a moment before he walked inside without a word. Claire scoffed. Charming as ever. I don't care, I said, and for the first time I meant it. Later that night, I found Mark in the kitchen. He was standing by the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His eyes were distant. I didn't know you drank whiskey, I said, leaning against the counter. Mark's gaze flicked toward me. There's a lot you don't know about me. My chest tightened. Maybe because you never let me in. Mark's jaw tensed. Or maybe you stopped looking. I stepped closer. I never stopped looking. You stopped being there. His eyes darkened. That's not fair. Isn't it? My voice sharpened. You gave Lily more of yourself than you ever gave me. Mark's hand tightened around the glass. It's not like that. Then what is it like? He exhaled slowly. She needed me. And I didn't. My voice wavered, but I steadied myself. Do you even realize how many nights I stayed awake, waiting for you to come home? How many times I made excuses for you? Mark's face twisted. Emma, stop. No, I said, stepping closer. You stopped caring long before I stopped trying. He set down the glass with a sharp clink. Maybe you were always too much. My chest ached, but I forced myself to meet his gaze. Or maybe you were never enough. A tense silence stretched between us. Mark's eyes hardened. He opened his mouth to say something, but I held up my hand. I'm done making you the center of my world, I said. Mark's brows furrowed. What does that mean? It means I'm choosing me this time. He took a step toward me. Emma. I shook my head. You don't get to ask for more when you've already given it to someone else. Mark's hand curled into a fist. I never cheated. You didn't have to, I said quietly. You gave her your time, your attention. That's enough. Mark's face hardened. He turned toward the window, his reflection staring back at him. So, what now? That's up to you. My voice was steady. But I'm not waiting for you anymore. The next morning, I woke up to find Mark sitting at the kitchen table. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled. He was holding a piece of paper. What's that? I asked. Mark hesitated before setting it down. Divorce papers. My breath caught. You. I'm giving you an out, Mark said quietly. My chest tightened. And what if I don't want it? Mark's gaze sharpened. Do you? I hesitated, the weight of his question pressing down on me. I don't know. Mark's jaw clenched. I'm trying, Emma. But if you don't want to stay. I sat down across from him. What do you want? Mark's eyes darkened. I want things to go back to how they were. I smiled sadly. They never will. Mark's face twisted. Why not? Because I'm not that woman anymore, I said softly. I won't settle for being second choice. Mark's eyes softened. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. Then help me fix it. My heart thudded painfully. You can't fix something that's already broken. Mark's hand fell away. His expression closed off. So that's it. I stood up, my heart racing. That's up to you. As I walked away, I felt his gaze follow me. But for once, I wasn't the one trying to hold on. That evening, Mark didn't come home. I sat by the window, staring into the darkness. My phone buzzed, Claire's name lit up the screen.
Hey, I said.
Did he sign them?
No. Claire sighed.
And how do you feel about that? I smiled faintly, relieved. Claire laughed. Told you you'd feel better. It's not about feeling better, I said. It's about knowing I don't need him anymore. Claire's voice softened. So, what now? I don't know, I said honestly. But for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of the answer. As I hung up, I felt a strange lightness settle in my chest. Maybe Mark would figure things out. Maybe he wouldn't. But that wasn't my problem anymore. For once, I wasn't waiting for him to come home. I was already finding my way back to myself. Cliffhanger. As I stood by the window, I saw Mark's car pull into the driveway. My heart didn't race this time. I watched him step out, his face shadowed in the dim light. He hesitated before walking toward the door. I smiled faintly. This time, he would have to earn his way back in. The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains, casting soft shadows on the bedroom walls. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands clasped together, heart pounding. Today was the day I would finally make a choice, one that would define the rest of my life. Mark was in the kitchen, the sound of dishes clinking faintly drifting through the air. His presence felt heavier than usual, as if the weight of unspoken words had settled between us. I stood, my breath shaky, and walked toward the kitchen. Mark was standing by the counter, coffee mug in hand. His gaze lifted when he saw me. Morning, he said quietly. I nodded, leaning against the doorframe. Morning. An awkward silence stretched between us. Mark's fingers tightened around the handle of the mug. He took a slow sip before setting it down on the counter. You didn't sleep well, he observed. I shrugged. Neither did you. Mark's gaze darkened. How could I? I swallowed hard. Mark, we need to talk. His jaw tensed, but he nodded. Yeah, we do. I took a deep breath, my heart hammering in my chest. I can't keep doing this. Mark's eyes narrowed. Doing what? This. I gestured between us. The waiting. The guessing. Wondering if I'll ever be enough. Mark's face twisted. You think you're not enough? That's not the point, I said softly. The point is, I'm tired of trying to be. Mark's eyes flashed with something close to desperation. Emma? I held up my hand. Let me finish. He fell silent. I gave you everything, I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. My time. My love. My trust. And when it mattered most, you gave it to someone else. Mark's face darkened. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, I said, stepping closer. You shielded Lily when the restaurant collapsed. You didn't think about me. Mark's chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. It was instinct. I nodded slowly. Exactly. Mark's eyes softened. Emma, I'm sorry. I know. My voice was quiet. But sorry isn't enough. Mark reached for me, but I stepped back. His hand froze midair before he let it fall to his side. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But I can't forget. Mark's eyes glimmered with something painful. What are you saying? I'm saying I deserve more. My voice didn't waver this time. I deserve someone who chooses me. Every time. Mark's expression tightened. And you think I'm not that person? My throat tightened. I think you could have been. But you weren't. A heavy silence filled the room. Mark's hand pressed against the counter, his knuckles widening. So, this is it, he whispered. Tears burned the back of my eyes, but I forced myself to stay strong. It has to be. Mark's head lowered. His shoulders sagged beneath the weight of my words. I love you, he said, his voice rough. I know, I whispered. But it's not enough. I packed my things later that afternoon. Claire came over to help, her eyes sharp as she folded my clothes and stacked my books into a box. Are you sure about this? Claire asked, glancing at me as I taped up the last box. I sighed, sinking onto the bed. I have to be. Claire sat beside me, her hand resting over mine. You're stronger than you think, you know. I smiled faintly. I don't feel strong. You are, Claire said. Because walking away from something broken takes more strength than staying. A knock at the door made us both tense.
Claire stood.
Do you want me to? No, I said. I'll handle it. I walked to the door and opened it to find Mark standing there, his hands in his pockets, eyes shadowed.
You're leaving, he said.
I nodded.
Yeah.
Mark's eyes tightened. So that's it. I think it's better this way, I said quietly. Mark's gaze dropped to the floor. What if I want to fight for us? My heart squeezed painfully. Then you should have fought sooner. Mark's eyes flashed with frustration. I'm trying now. I smiled sadly. It's too late. Mark's jaw tensed. You're really walking away? I'm choosing myself, I said softly. Mark's eyes darkened. He took a step forward, but I didn't move. I'm sorry, he said. I know, I whispered. Mark reached out, his hand brushing against my arm. For a moment, I almost leaned into his touch, but then I remembered all the nights I waited, all the tears I cried. I stepped back. Goodbye, Mark. Mark's face twisted, but he didn't stop me as I closed the door. Claire drove me to her apartment later that evening. I sat in the passenger seat, the city lights blurring past the window. You okay? Claire asked. I smiled faintly.
No.
But I will be. Claire's lips curved. Good. Because you deserve to be happy. For the first time, I believed it. As the car slowed to a stop, I exhaled. I was free. Free to choose myself. Free to heal. Free to build a life that wasn't built around someone else's expectations. And maybe, just maybe, that was the happiest ending of all.